She was only 6 when she vanished. No scream, no witness, no explanation, just silence. For 13 years her sister lived with that silence until a dying magician whispered the unthinkable. Now, before we go any further, I want you to stop and think. If someone you loved disappeared without a trace, would you ever stop looking? Because Claire Donnelly never did. And what she uncovered was never supposed to be found. It was supposed to be the happiest day of the summer, a carnival. Balloons, laughter, the smell of buttered popcorn twisting through the air. Children ran barefoot across sunlit grass. Parents laughed too loudly at tired jokes. Music blared from cheap speakers rigged around the rides, always slightly out of tune. There were clowns, cotton candy, and the spinning teacups. Bright red, bright blue, always full of screaming joy. No one expected that 2 children would vanish into that noise and never be seen again, and that 13 years later a dying magician would whisper, "I never meant for it to happen like that." June 9th, 2012, Asheville, North Carolina. Temperatures were high, the sun sat stubbornly above the hills, and the annual Asheville Summer Carnival was in full swing. The Donnelly family arrived just after 3 p.m., parking in the gravel lot near the old soccer fields. Claire, age 14, sat in the front seat beside her dad, her legs bouncing with impatient nerves. She had begged to wear lipstick that day, red, the only tube she owned. Her younger siblings, twins Emma and Oliver, were in the back, already arguing over which ride to go on first. Their mother had packed sandwiches, juice boxes, and wipes, like she always did. She reminded them to stay together. But by 6 p.m., they wouldn't be a family anymore. There's something odd about the way sound travels in a carnival. Music from one ride bleeds into another. The voice of a vendor gets swallowed by laughter before reaching the end of a sentence. Screams of joy and panic are indistinguishable. For Claire, that blur was intoxicating. The flashing lights, the spinning rides, the colors, it all felt like escape. That day, more than any other, she didn't want to be the responsible older sister. She just wanted to disappear into something loud. And so she did, for 20 minutes. While their parents waited in line for barbecue plates and the twins were supposed to be riding the kiddie coaster, Claire wandered toward the magician's tent. Not because she liked magic, she didn't, but because she'd heard someone say he had fire in him, and fire felt more real than anything else. The magician was called Jacko the Magnificent. He wore a top hat, spoke in half rhymes, and had a rabbit that never came out of the hat the same way twice. His tent was tucked near the back edge of the carnival, where the lights didn't reach quite as bright and the grass grew too high. People didn't sit inside. They hovered. There were no seats, just a stage with velvet curtains and a spotlight that flickered when the generator dipped. Claire remembers stepping inside. She remembers the heat, the strange smell of sulfur and lavender, the way the magician's eyes followed her without blinking. She stood there, arms crossed, watching as he made a bird disappear from a cage, then reappear from the sleeve of a child in the crowd. Emma loved birds. Oliver hated cages. Claire left the tent exactly 23 minutes later. She checked her phone, 1 bar of signal, and ran back toward the food court. Their mother was screaming. People were running. Her father had dropped both sandwiches. 2 cups of lemonade spilled in the grass. And her little brother's jacket, blue with a missing zipper, lay in the dirt next to a deflated balloon. There was no blood, no noise, no broken glass, no touch. The kind of silence that unravels families. The search lasted for days. Dogs, helicopters, dozens of volunteers, local news, national coverage. Twins vanish at North Carolina Carnival. But there were no witnesses, no security footage, no ransom notes, no signs of abduction. Gone between the rides, gone between the beats of a song, gone between breaths. Claire told the police she had last seen the twins heading toward the Ferris wheel. She lied. She'd seen someone else, a man, tall, standing behind the magician's tent, wearing black, holding something in his gloved hand. A rabbit. A small white shoe. She didn't tell anyone. Not then. Not for 13 years. The Donnelly family imploded. Their mothers stopped eating. Their fathers started drinking. Claire started waking up at 3 a.m. every night, convinced she'd heard Emma calling her name. By Christmas that year, the Donnellys had sold the house, moved across town, and stopped celebrating holidays. The carnival was never held again, not officially. But every summer Claire returned to the empty field where it once stood, just to stand in the silence. And in that silence, she would replay the tape. There was a VHS tape recorded on the day of the carnival. Claire's father had used his old camcorder, more out of nostalgia than purpose. He filmed the family walking in, the twins holding cotton candy, Claire pretending not to notice the camera. At 2 minutes and 17 seconds, there's a flicker of motion behind the popcorn booth. A man wearing black, top hat, white glove. It's just a glimpse, one frame, but it never left Claire. She watched that frame hundreds of times, burned it into her brain, never told anyone, never reported it. Because she didn't want to face the possibility that she had seen the person who took them and done nothing. In 2025, Claire was 27. She worked as a freelance investigative journalist in Denver. Cold cases were her specialty. She understood how to trace a trail no one else could see. She never solved her own. Until the day her father called. "Jacko's in the hospital," he said. Claire sat up. "The magician?" "Yeah, dying." Said something weird. Claire's breath stopped. "What did he say?" "To the nurse, she told the sheriff." "What?" "He said, 'I never meant for it to happen like that.' Then he said something about the music stopping. Then he died." Claire didn't wait. She booked a flight that night. The hospital in Asheville was small and understaffed. Room 213. Claire arrived the next morning, but Jacko was already gone. His bed still held the shape of his body, his personal effects. One coat, one deck of cards, one half-burnt photo. Claire asked the nurse to see the photo. It showed a stage and 3 children. One of them, center frame, looked just like Emma. The back of the photo had a note, scrawled in shaky handwriting. Only one of them was supposed to disappear. Claire walked out of the hospital shaking. The heat outside was heavy. The kind of heat that presses on your bones and makes your skin itch. She got in the rental car, turned the ignition, and sat there staring at her hands. Then she took out her phone. Opened the gallery, scrolled to the still image from the VHS tape, frame 2. She looked at the man in the hat, then the girl on the photo, and whispered. That night, Claire returned to the carnival grounds. Field, tall grass, an old rusted sign, but she walked toward the spot where the magician's tent had once stood. She stood still, closed her eyes, and listened. Nothing. Then a sound, soft, low, mechanical, like a music box, playing something old, something slow. Claire turned. Behind her, half buried in the dirt, was a small speaker, still working, barely. It played a single, looping melody, something Emma used to hum in the bathtub. Claire reached down, picked it up, and underneath it, she saw it. A white shoelace, frayed, wrapped around a piece of red fabric, and for the first time in 13 years, she whispered aloud. They didn't vanish. They were taken. Claire Donnelly did not believe in peace. Not anymore. She believed in habits, in systems, in staying one step ahead of the memories that still clawed at the walls of her mind every time she tried to sleep. Her apartment in Denver was small, neat, and colorless. There were no picture frames, no postcards from friends, no reminders of where she came from. She kept the blinds closed most days, lived mostly on coffee and protein bars, and used a whiteboard on the wall to organize every cold case she worked on. Claire was good at her job. not because she was brave or brilliant, but because she knew how to listen. She knew what silence meant. She knew what people didn't say, because she'd lived inside silence for 13 years. Her most recent article was about a girl who had vanished from a foster home in Utah. Claire had traced the disappearance to a basement door no one thought to open. When the article published, she didn't feel proud, just relieved, like she'd managed to stop a scream from rising in her throat, for now. She was still screaming on the inside, just very quietly. The VHS tape lived in a fireproof lockbox beneath her bed. She hadn't watched it in over a year. Couldn't. But she thought about it daily. She knew the timestamp by heart, 2 minutes, 17 seconds. The moment the magician's hand appears, the moment her brother and sister might still be in the background, alive and breathing and walking towards something they should have never seen. She hated herself for watching it so many times. But she hated herself more for never telling the police what she'd seen. She told them she had been with the twins, that they'd gone to the Ferris wheel together, but the truth was, Claire had ditched them for a boy, for lipstick, for something stupid and forgettable. And then they were gone, and she hadn't even screamed. She kept a single photo of the twins on her nightstand. Emma, blonde curls tied in ribbons, was smiling wide, holding a balloon. Oliver wore a superhero cape and looked like he was trying to fly. Claire was standing behind them in the picture, arms crossed, half smile. It had been taken 10 minutes before they disappeared. She didn't smile in real life anymore, only in the picture. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again, and again. On the 4th try, she answered. "Claire Donnelly?" a woman asked. "No, yes." "This is Nurse Porter at Blue Ridge Medical." "I believe you're listed as next of kin for Jasper Corbin." She blinked. "Who?" The nurse paused. "Jacko. Jacko the Magnificent." Claire sat upright. "He passed away last night. You're listed on a release form. It appears he named you specifically to receive his personal effects." Claire couldn't speak. The nurse continued. "There's a small box, his coat, a deck of cards, a VHS tape labeled Final Rehearsal. Would you like it mailed or picked up in person?" Claire didn't wait. She flew to Asheville the next morning. She hadn't been back in 7 years. The town looked smaller. Or maybe she'd just gotten used to living inside walls. Her father lived in the same house, though he didn't really live anymore. He existed. A quiet man in a quiet room with sunken eyes and a recliner that creaked every time he shifted. He didn't greet her when she arrived, just turned off the TV and said, "It's happening again, isn't it?" She nodded. He poured a drink. She poured coffee. Neither of them said Emma or Oliver's name, not yet. Claire opened the magician's box on her father's kitchen table. Inside, a faded top hat, a deck of tarot cards, incomplete, a gold button with a rabbit insignia, and one tape, Final Rehearsal, Summer Carnival 2012. Her hands trembled. She searched the attic for the old VHS player. She remembered her mom insisting on keeping it for home movies. Now it felt like a relic from a better dimension. The screen flickered when she hit play. Snow, then color. The tape showed a stage. Children gathered around. Emma and Oliver were in the front row. Claire choked. They were clapping, laughing. Jacko took the stage. Younger, sharper, less grotesque. He called up volunteers. A few children went forward. Then the camera shifted, unsteady. Someone was filming from behind the curtain. A second camera, not Jacko's, not official. And in the background, a man in black, not Jacko, taller, still, wearing a blank white mask. The footage ended with static. Claire replayed it 3 times. Each time, she saw more. A red bracelet. Emma's, the one with stars that matched Claire's. Claire hadn't seen it since the carnival. She'd assumed it had been lost, but there it was, on Emma's wrist, glowing under the stage light. And then it was cut from the frame. as if someone had edited the tape, someone who didn't want her to see what came. That night she returned to the fairground, overgrown, abandoned. She stood where the magician's tent had been. The grass was ankle-high. She knelt, fingers combing the dirt, looking, searching. Then she saw it, something red, buried. She dug, a ribbon, cloth, soft, familiar. She pulled it out slowly, and attached to it a charm, 3 stars, silver, old, bent, her bracelet, the one Emma had worn. Claire gasped. Her hand covered her mouth, because carved into the back of the charm, in letters so faint she nearly missed them, were 4 words. Claire. I remember. Come. The bracelet hadn't rusted. It was dirty, scratched, the stars dulled from years in the soil. But it hadn't rusted. Claire turned it over again and again in her hand, brushing the dirt away gently like she was waking something up. The engraving on the back. Claire, I remember. Come. Looked like it had been scratched with something dull. A stone, maybe, or a nail. And the letters. They looked like Emma's handwriting, not from when she was 6, more recent. More practiced, more desperate. Claire held the bracelet to her chest and closed her eyes. Emma was alive. She had to be, and she had left a message. Back at her father's house, Claire took out her notes and cleared the kitchen table. She began mapping out everything again from scratch. She wasn't investigating for a newspaper now. This was her life. She created a timeline from memory. 2:03 p.m. The Donnellys arrive. Emma gets a balloon. Oliver wants cotton candy. 2:22 p.m. Last confirmed sighting of the twins near the spinning teacups. 2:24 p.m. Claire enters Jacko's tent. 2:47 p.m. Claire exits. Twins are gone. 3:03 p.m. Blue jacket found. First screams 6:40 p.m. Grounds cleared, no video footage. Then she wrote, 2:17, VHS frame, man in hat. Now she had a new line to add. 2025, bracelet found beneath the tent location, engraved, fresh. She stayed up all night searching. Forums, Reddit threads, deep web message boards, anything tied to the Levain Institute or the Red Veil Caravan. The name she had found on Jacko's old props, stamped faintly on the inside of his top hat. She didn't find much, mostly fragments. One post from a former stagehand, anonymous, saying he'd been hired to clean up after a Red Veil show in 2012 in Missouri. Said he'd found strange things in the trailers, drawings, notes, toys. He reported it. The show moved on. No one followed up. Claire emailed him. No reply. She tried the phone number. Disconnected. She tried everything. Then she tried something else. She uploaded a still frame of the bracelet, with the engraving visible, to an old message board for missing persons under the subject, found buried at Asheville Carnival grounds. June 9, 2012 case. Can anyone help identify? She didn't leave her real name, just her burner email. Then she waited. 2 days later, she got a response. It was one line. She left more than that. No name, no signature. But the reply included coordinates, a small stretch of forest 20 miles outside Asheville. Claire stared at the map for a long time. Then she printed it, loaded her bag with gloves, water, a flashlight, and drove. The trail was overgrown. No signposts, no paths, just thick brush and uneven earth. Claire followed her phone's GPS for an hour before she found it, a tree, oak, massive. And carved into the bark, 3 initials, O plus E plus C. Oliver, Emma, Claire. Her breath caught. The carving was fresh, not 13 years old. She knelt near the roots, looked around, saw nothing. But something told her to dig. She pulled out her pocket knife and clawed at the dirt with its tip. A few inches down, she hit something solid, metal, a small tin lunchbox, rusted around the edges. She opened it slowly. Inside, a folded paper crane, a child's drawing, a teacup with rolls, a Polaroid photo, blurry but clear enough to see Emma, and a cassette tape written on the tape in smudged black marker. Stars can't be erased. Claire returned home in a daze. She didn't own a cassette player anymore, but her father did. It was buried in a closet, covered in dust, next to a box of his old jazz tapes. She placed the tape in, pressed play, the hiss of static. Then a voice. Faint, shaky, but familiar. "Claire, it's me. I think I'm still me." Claire's heart stopped. Emma. "I don't know where I am. They change the lights. They make us say things over and over, but I remember. I remember the stars. I remember you. I remember the red ride. I remember a rabbit. I remember Oliver screaming." Claire covered her mouth. The voice broke. "They said we were stories. They said we weren't real. But I know we were. I know we are." The tape clicked. Stopped. Claire pressed her forehead to the player and cried. That night, someone broke into her car. Nothing was taken, but the glove compartment was open, and inside, placed carefully, was a Polaroid. A recent one. Emma, standing in front of a wall covered in mirrors, a blank expression, and behind her, the masked man, still watching. Claire screamed. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of her old bedroom, legs crossed, the cassette tape in her lap, and the Polaroid beside her. Emma's face stared back at her, older now, tired, vacant, and behind her stood the man in black, motionless, masked. The tape had been real. The voice had been real. Emma was alive, or had been. Claire wasn't sure anymore. She was running out of time, and she knew it. The next morning, she returned to the Asheville Public Library. The archive room smelled of dust and old paper, fluorescent lights flickering above yellowing newspaper clippings and half-functional microfiche readers. Claire asked the librarian for the original event map of the 2012 Summer Carnival. He returned with a rolled-up diagram in a cracked leather tube. Unfolding it on the large reading table, Claire traced the layout with her finger. Main stage, food court, Ferris wheel, and then the big top, Jacko's tent. There was a smaller area marked just behind it, backline prep. She didn't remember that being there. It wasn't in the police reports. She went to the records desk and requested the vendor permits for that section. Only one was listed, Red Veil Logistics, Personnel Access, only signed by Tomas Galliano. She froze. She'd heard that name before. She flipped through her notes. Yes. Galliano had been listed as the event logistics manager in the 2012 police file, but she'd never spoken to him. Time to change that. Tomas Galliano lived in Savannah now, according to the phone number she found listed under an old invoice from Red Veil Entertainment. She called. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. On the third try, a voice finally answered. Hesitant, gravelly. "Who is this?" "My name is Claire Donnelly. I'm—" A pause. "The sister," Tomas said. "I know." Claire froze. "Then you know why I'm calling." "You shouldn't be." "I found the bracelet." Silence. "I found the tape, her voice." More silence. "She's alive, Tomas, or she was," he exhaled. "You need to come here." She arrived at a dusty duplex 2 days later. Tomas opened the door slowly. He was older than she expected. Thinner, nervous. He didn't invite her in, just handed her a single manila folder and said, "I kept this. I don't know why. Maybe guilt." Inside were photographs of performers, backstage passes, children, rehearsing, and one contract. Between Red Veil Caravan and a company called Levain Holdings, dated May 3, 2012. The contract had been co-signed by a Jasper Corbin, Jacko, and beneath his signature, another name. M. Vielle Claire looked up. "Who is Vielle?" Tomas looked down. "I don't know. He never gave a full name, just initials. He was always watching, never performing." "What was this contract for?" Tomas hesitated. Then, talent acquisition. Claire left sick to her stomach. She sat in the car, gripping the folder, staring at the blurred signature again. Vielle. Something clicked. She opened her notes, scratched at a page. Vielle is an anagram of Leva, short for Levain. Her breath caught. It wasn't a person, it was the program. And whoever had signed the papers had been running it. She called Detective Brenner next, told her everything, the tape, the tin box, the photo, the contract. I think they were testing something, Claire said, on children. Emma escaped. That's why she left the messages. I can try to reopen the case, Brenner said, but if there's a private entity involved, they'll bury it again. Claire paused. There's more. She told her about the carving in the tree, the initials, O plus E plus C. And the new message scratched into the back of a road sign near the trail. One of them never forgot. That night Claire stayed in a motel outside Savannah. She couldn't return home, not yet. She placed the bracelet, the Polaroid, and the tin box on the dresser. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Silence. Then static. Then a whisper. Her name, once, twice, and then, you shouldn't have come back. The line went dead. She opened her laptop, went back to the last still image from the VHS, the man in the top hat. She ran it through a facial mapping tool, not for the man, his face was hidden, but for the background. She adjusted brightness, contrast. A child's drawing taped to the back curtain, a teacup, 3 stars, and 3 letters, CEO Claire, Emma, Oliver. It had been there all along. Claire didn't sleep, not because of fear, that part had passed. Now it was something else. A slow, consuming certainty that this wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about all the kids, the names from the folder, the blurred faces in the tapes, the list marked candidates. Someone had built a system out of silence. And Claire had just stepped into the heart of it. She returned to Asheville. The moment she crossed into town, her phone buzzed. A new message, no sender, just one word. Stop. And a photo of her standing in the motel parking lot, taken from behind. She stared at it, didn't flinch, then deleted it. She called Brenner. I need to get into the storage unit behind the old fairgrounds. Brenner didn't ask why. She met Claire there that afternoon with bolt cutters. The unit hadn't been opened in over a decade. Inside were boxes, old equipment, rotting curtains, empty crates, and then, in the far corner, a cabinet with a lock. Claire opened it. Inside were tapes, dozens, labeled with first names and numbers. She ran her fingers across them. Emma, Oliver, Liam, Sophie, Ivy, Noah, all 6 to 8 years old, all marked with Phase 1. Claire's heart pounded. She grabbed Emma's tape, and Oliver's. They returned to Brenner's home and used an old monitor to watch. Emma's tape began with her name on a clipboard. A man behind the camera asked, "What's your favorite color?" "Blue." "What do you like to do?" "Dance." "Do you remember your sister?" "Yes." "Do you trust your sister?" Emma blinked. "Yes." Cut. Next scene. Same setting, different tone. "Do you remember your name?" "Emma." "Do you remember your sister?" Pause. "No." Claire choked. The footage jumped again. Emma now sat still. Too still. Her hands folded. She stared directly into the camera and recited, "Stars are stories. Stories aren't real. I am a page that will be turned." Oliver's tape was worse. He fought, yelled, tried to run off camera. Voices shouted. A door slammed. The screen cut to black. Then a final image. Oliver's drawing. A red ride. A rabbit. A stick figure with no face. Claire turned off the monitor. She couldn't breathe. She had imagined the worst. Later that night, while Brenner made coffee in the kitchen, Claire sat on the porch. A light wind stirred the trees. She looked up at the stars, then heard it. Faint. Footsteps. Behind her. She stood. Nothing. But on the table, where there had been nothing moments ago, Now sat a cassette tape, no label. She stared into the trees, no movement, just wind. She played it. Emma's voice again, softer, slower. I remember the room with the mirrors. I remember the man in black. I remember the mask. They said Oliver was too loud, that he wasn't chosen. They said I was special, that I could forget, but I didn't. Claire gripped the armrest of the chair. They changed my name, said I was a new story. But I remember the bracelet. I remember the field. I remember... Claire. Then, come to the mirrors. Claire knew where that was. The Mirage Hall. An abandoned rehearsal hall 2 towns over, once used for traveling performances. She'd seen it mentioned in an old invoice from the Red Veil Caravan. She and Brenner arrived before dawn. The building sagged under the weight of age, half the windows shattered, but the inside still whole. Dusty velvet curtains, cracked mirrors, dozens of them, in a circle, all facing each other, and in the center a chair and a drawing taped to the mirror. Claire pulled it down. It was a picture of her, labeled "She's Coming," drawn by Emma. The pencil was fresh. Claire stepped toward the chair. There was something underneath. A box. She opened it. Inside, a silver star. The 4th charm from the bracelet. And a note. Not a memory. A message. I left them for you. Brenner leaned in, then froze. There was something else. A photo. Recent. Emma, older, alive, standing in front of a sign. North Hollow Behavioral Center. Claire's blood turned to ice. They had renamed it, moved it, hidden it, but they hadn't buried it. Emma was alive. And she had led Claire here, to the next step, to the final step. The address was hidden under a different name, North Hollow Residential Therapy. Officially, it was a trauma rehabilitation center for youth. Privately, it was the last remnant of something much darker. Claire stood on the edge of the long gravel road leading into the forest. Brenner had driven them there. Neither had spoken much. The trees felt heavy, like they had watched too much. Claire clutched the last note Emma had left behind. Not a memory, a message. She knew she was close. At the gate, a voice buzzed through the speaker. "Do you have an appointment?" Claire answered without hesitation. "I'm here for my sister." "What's the patient's name?" "Emma Donnelly, but you renamed her." Then the gate opened. Inside, the building was sterile. White floors, white walls, doors with no knobs, staff with tight smiles and clipboard voices. They led Claire to a waiting room, told her she could meet patient 403 for 15 minutes. Then they brought her in. The room was small, quiet. Claire stood frozen in the doorway, and there she was. Emma, sitting on a couch, older, 17 now, long hair braided back, thin frame, pale skin. She stared straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. Claire whispered, "Emma?" The girl blinked, turned, and when her eyes met Claire's, they widened, just slightly. A breath caught in her throat. She stood. Slowly, then said, almost like a question, "Claire?" Claire nodded, tears rising. Emma's face crumpled. She rushed forward, and they embraced. No words, no logic, just a sound between them, like breath finally released after a decade underwater. The first thing Emma said when they sat down, "I thought I made you up." Claire laughed through tears. "I thought I lost you." Emma touched the bracelet on Claire's wrist. "I kept seeing it, in dreams, in drawings." "I thought it meant I still had a chance." Claire nodded. "You did." They spoke softly. Emma said she didn't remember everything, the faces blurred. Time didn't move normally. They had made her repeat new stories every day, fake names, fake memories. But something always stayed. Stars! A red ride, Oliver screaming, and Claire's voice saying... Claire showed her the drawings, the bracelet, the tin box. Emma looked at them like looking into a dream made solid. Then she whispered, "They said I passed the test. That I was blank enough. Claire gritted her teeth. You were never blank. Emma nodded. That's why I started leaving things. Little things. I didn't know if you'd find them, but I hoped. Claire touched her hand. You saved yourself. Emma's eyes filled. No, you saved me. A knock on the door. Time was up. Claire stood. I'll be back, she said. Emma nodded. But Claire could see the fear return to her face. I don't want to forget you again. Claire leaned in, pressed their foreheads together. You won't. I'll never let them erase me, or you. Outside, Claire met with a state attorney who Brenner had contacted days earlier. She gave them everything. The tapes, the contracts, the photographs, the voice recordings. Enough to open a federal investigation. By the next day, North Hollow was shut down. Emma was released into Claire's custody pending formal hearings. But that day, they didn't talk about hearings. They went home. Claire let Emma pick the room. Emma chose the small one. She liked cozy spaces, she said. They hung fairy lights. They painted the walls light blue. Claire ordered takeout and let Emma choose a movie. She picked something animated, full of light and noise and color. Halfway through, Emma leaned her head on Claire's shoulder. I missed you, she said. Claire smiled. I never stopped looking. That night Emma couldn't sleep. She sat in the hallway, knees pulled to her chest. Claire sat with her. Neither said a word for a long time. Then Emma asked, Do you think he's really gone? Claire didn't have to ask who. She shook her head. People like him leave shadows. Emma looked down. I dream about Oliver sometimes. Claire swallowed. Me too. Emma reached into her pocket, pulled out a paper star, folded perfectly. I made one every time I remembered something true. Claire blinked back tears. Emma handed her the star. You're my truth. The summer carnival never returned to Asheville. No one ever spoke of it again. Not publicly. The field remained empty, overgrown, silent. But sometimes, if you walked by it at just the right hour, you might swear you heard something. The rustle of grass, the jingle of a ride long torn down. The whisper of a girl's voice calling a name that had once echoed through the warm summer air. Claire and Emma didn't talk about everything right away. Some things needed time, some things didn't need words. They built their life one moment at a time. A garden in the backyard, mornings with tea and silence, nights with music that Emma chose herself. Stars above them like witnesses. One day Emma asked, Do you ever think about who we would have been? Claire paused, then smiled softly. All the time, but I like who you are now. Emma looked down. Do you think Oliver would have liked us? Claire didn't answer at first. Then she said, He would have been proud, because we didn't let go. Emma nodded, eyes misting. He's part of everything. Claire never stopped writing, but she didn't write articles now. She wrote letters to Oliver, to Emma, to herself, the 14-year-old girl who thought she'd lost everything in a single afternoon. Sometimes she walked back to the edge of the old carnival field and left a note pinned to a wooden post. Always the same message. We remember, and we found each other. Emma drew again. Every day, she covered her wall with stars, and in the center, one drawing remained untouched. A teacup, red. 3 stick figures holding hands. Above it she wrote, We were never erased. The night before Emma turned 18, she and Claire sat outside on the porch. The sky was clear, endless. Emma leaned back in her chair. Do you still have the bracelet? Claire lifted her wrist. The silver stars glinted faintly in the moonlight. Always, Emma smiled. Do you remember what Mom used to say when the lights went out during storms? Claire nodded slowly. You're not lost. Emma finished it. You're just waiting to be found. And in that moment it was clear. They hadn't just survived something terrible. They had rewritten it, with memory, with truth, with love. They never forgot Oliver. They never forgot the red ride. They never forgot the man in the mask. But they also never forgot who they were. Claire, Emma, Donnelly. They weren't a story that ended in silence. They were a story that fought its way back into the light. And sometimes, that's the greatest magic of all. You're not lost. You're just waiting to be found.